The world's dumbest idea. The world's most idiotic idea, the one that makes the least sense of all ideas probably, is the phrase God did it. There is no God did it in Christianity, and there's no God of the gaps. God is the creator. God came before time and space, before matter. God, in his analytical framework, is the before of everything. And to say God did it is to misconstrue the entire realm of creation, because God did it, to start with, is a causative um, explanation, or did is as if we are physical. It's a physical expression. I did it, meaning I physically performed, or this act, or caused this phenomenon to take place. But God didn't did it, because God is creative. It would be like having a thought and say, I did it. A thought isn't a physical outcome of a physical event, a physical impact, as it were. We think, we create, we compose. We didn't did it. So the conception of God as a did it thing is absurd and totally meaningless. The God did it thing is, of course, associated with God, the God of the gaps absurdity. Another atheist, irrational idea. And in this science, or no, shouldn't say science, a bunch of semi-literate atheists have come to the idea that where science hasn't quite answered something, then Christians are coming in and say, well, God did it. Or God, when science can't have an answer. But science doesn't have answers to start with. Science explains the process of something, how it's occurring. It's mapping out the events that are occurring in the physical world. It's not saying how the event transpired to come about. It's not giving an explanation for it in the absolute sense. It can say, to get to Toronto, you follow Highway 11. That's science. And if you follow Highway 11, you can demonstrate that you get to Toronto, assuming you're going the right way. But that doesn't explain the actual going. That can only be explained within the human realm, the human will. And so we can say that the wind is being caused by high pressures and low pressures, and temperature of the oceans, and so on and so forth, and figure out some kind of pattern for the weather. But that doesn't explain the weather, and it doesn't. And if where the explanation is lacking, it doesn't mean to say that Christians are saying God did it. because nature's simply the processes God has put in place. And if we don't understand how a tree grows, we don't need to say God did it, because a tree grows. That's what it does. If it's alive, it grows. Living things grow. And if we don't understand it, it doesn't mean to say God did it. And if we don't understand how the planets actually configured themselves, it doesn't mean to say God did it, in the sense that he had to do each individual thing as a special creation. The Big Bang is actually quite consistent with God's creation, other than the long time frames that have been put into place for the atheist's own amusement. But we don't need to say God did it when God has created the natural forces, when God has created the conceptions that underlie or form the perceived world. And while we're on this subject, it's not just a matter of trying to explain natural processes by saying God did it. It's also a matter of remembering that evil is in this world, and if things die, it's not to say God did it, because death is a natural outcome of having sin in the world. And if there is entropic processes at work, it's not to say that God did it. And it's not to say that entropy explains any more than the God did it hypothesis, or that to say that, oh, it's energy, it's causality, it's all of these forces that really aren't observable. We're looking at the outcome, the events surrounding them, but we can't actually see energy. We can't see gravity. Gravity is just a name for a perceived effect. The fact that we see masses attract each other, we say, oh, well, that's gravity. A gravity is a we don't know did it. So if the God did it hypothesis is absurd, then the we don't know what it is did it is even more absurd, because gravity is a we don't know what did it hypothesis. It's just a name for something we don't know what it is. And while we can see the order and the predictability of the way masses attract each other, we have no idea what gravity is. Don't have a clue. It's just a name for an observable effect that we don't know what it is. And to say gravity did it is not just to say gravity did it, it's to say we don't know what it is did it. Far more absurd than the God did it hypothesis, and that's absurd enough in itself.